My wife left me for my boss. I married the boss's daughter. The scent of her perfume hit me first. It wasn't the soft, familiar jasmine I'd bought her for our anniversary. This was something sharper, more expensive, a scent that didn't belong in our modest, book-lined living room. It smelled of boardrooms and luxury hotel lobbies. Sarah was standing by the fireplace, her posture unnaturally rigid, her back to me as I closed the door, shrugging off the damp chill of the evening. "You're home early," I said, a flicker of unease in my chest. My words hung in the air, unanswered. I was a structural engineer. My world was one of load-bearing calculations, of stress tests and sure foundations. I believed in cause and effect, invisible forces and measurable resilience. But nothing in my training prepared me for the seismic failure that was about to fracture my life. She turned. Her face, usually so animated, was a beautiful, cold mask. There were no tears, only a terrifying resolve in her hazel eyes. "We need to talk, Daniel," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "Okay," I said slowly, placing my laptop bag on the worn armchair. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" A humorless smile touched her lips. "Yes, Daniel. Something happened. I've happened." She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for a presentation. "I'm in love with someone else. I'm leaving." The words were simple, blunt objects thrown at the stained glass window of our 7-year marriage. They didn't shatter it immediately, they just stuck there, ugly and impossible, while my mind scrambled to understand. "What? Who? Sarah, what are you talking about?" I heard the pathetic confusion in my own voice. "Marcus," she said, and the name landed like a guillotine. "Marcus Thorne? My boss. The founder and CEO of Thorne Engineering Solutions. A man 20 years our senior, with a silver fox demeanor, a wardrobe worth more than my car, and a reputation for being as brilliant as he was ruthless." I laughed. It was a short, desperate sound. "Marcus. Sarah, that's insane. He's my boss. He's married, for God's sake. He's getting a divorce," she stated, as if reading from a press release. "It's been over for years. We didn't plan this, Daniel. It just evolved. He understands me. He sees the woman I am, the woman I want to be. Not just the wife of a junior engineer." Each sentence was a precise, calculated demolition charge. "He understands me. The woman I want to be." I thought of the late nights I'd worked on the Greenboro Bridge project, bringing home mediocre takeout, of our careful budgeting for a future vacation, of my promise that one day, I'd give her more. I was building our future beam by beam, but she wanted a prefabricated palace. "And what woman is that?" I asked, my voice cracking. "A woman who doesn't have to check her bank account before buying a good bottle of wine," she said, her gaze sweeping over our cozy, shabby chic room with sudden disdain. "A woman who travels first class, who wears couture, who is seen at important events. Marcus can provide a life of luxury, Daniel. A life you can only dream of." The final phrase was delivered not with malice, but with a chilling, matter-of-fact pity. That was what broke me. Not anger, not yet, but a devastating, hollow grief. The foundation of my world wasn't just cracked, it had vaporized. The following days were a blur of numb agony. Sarah moved out that same night, her suitcase rolling across the hardwood floor with a finality that echoed in my soul. She went to a penthouse apartment Marcus kept in the city. I called in sick, paralyzed by loss. When I finally dragged myself back to Thorne Engineering, the air in the sleek, glass and steel office felt different. Colleagues avoided my eyes. Whispers trailed me like ghosts. I was no longer Daniel, the diligent engineer. I was Daniel, The pathetic cuckold. Marcus summoned me to his corner office on the top floor. The view of the city skyline was breathtaking, a panorama of power. He didn't rise from his Italian leather chair. "Daniel," he began, steepling his fingers. He looked every bit the corporate titan, completely unruffled. "This is an unfortunate situation. Personal and professional lines have been blurred in a most messy way." I stood there, feeling small in my off-the-rack suit. "Sir, I just want to do my job. The Greenboro project the Greenboro project will be reassigned," he interrupted, his voice smooth as oil. "The truth is, Daniel, your presence here has become a distraction. For Sarah, for me, for the team. It's affecting morale. We need to focus on the work, not on domestic drama. You're firing me." The words were a disbelieving whisper. "Let's call it a mutually agreed separation," he said, sliding a white envelope across the vast desk. "There's a generous severance. 6 months' salary. Consider it compensation for your inconvenience. Sign the non-disclosure agreement, and it's yours." Inconvenience. My marriage, my career, my dignity all reduced to an inconvenience to be paid off. The rage finally ignited, white-hot and pure, but what could I do? A public fight would blacklist me in the industry. Marcus Thorne had that kind of power. I took the envelope, my hand trembling not with fear, but with impotent fury. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Daniel," Marcus said, turning to look out at his kingdom. The dismissal was absolute. That was my rock bottom. Unemployed, divorced, and utterly alone. The severance ran out. I sold the house, the memories too painful to inhabit. I moved into a cramped studio apartment and took a drafting job at a small, nondescript firm, my ambitions reduced to lines on a screen for projects I didn't care about. My life became a monochrome routine of work, cheap noodles, and the heavy silence of a future that had died. A year passed. The raw, screaming pain had subsided into a constant, dull ache, a companion I'd learned to live with. I'd heard through the ghostly network of former colleagues that Sarah and Marcus were now a public item, splashed across the business and society pages. Power couple, the headlines called them. She got her couture, her first-class trips, her seat at the important tables. I tried not to look, but sometimes I'd see a photo of her laughing on the deck of a yacht, her hand on Marcus's arm, and the ache would sharpen into a fresh, but familiar, wound. My salvation, ironically, came through work. My new firm was hired as a secondary consultant on a pro bono project, a community arts center in a struggling neighborhood. It was the kind of project Thorne Engineering would never touch. No glory, minimal profit. But it meant something. It was about building a place, not just a structure. One rain-slicked Tuesday, I was at the proposed site, reviewing soil samples with the lead architect, when a voice cut through the damp air. "Those reports are from last month. The groundwater table shifted after the last storm. You're working with outdated data." I turned. A woman in sturdy boots, jeans, and a wax jacket stood there, a new, mud-spattered folder in her hand. Her dark hair was escaping from a messy bun, and she had an iPad tucked under her arm. She wasn't conventionally beautiful like Sarah. Hers was a fiercer, more intelligent beauty, with sharp green eyes and a mouth set in a line of impatient competence. "And you are?" our project lead asked, slightly miffed. "Elena Thorne. From the city's Historical and Environmental Oversight Committee. Your new data is here." She thrust the folder forward. Thorne. The name was a punch to the gut. I stared. There was a resemblance, now that I looked for it, the same strong jawline, the same penetrating gaze. But where Marcus's eyes were calculating, hers were analytical. Where his smile was a weapon, hers looked like it might be warm, if it ever appeared. She noticed my stare. "Problem?" "No," I managed. Daniel Miller. I'm with the drafting team. Her brow furrowed slightly. Miller. You used to work for my father. It wasn't a question. The whole sordid tale was probably a piece of gossip she'd heard. I braced for the pity, the condescension, the judgment. Yes, I said stiffly. I did. To my surprise, she just nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Then you know better than most the importance of double-checking his company's work. They have a habit of cutting corners. The blunt criticism of Marcus Thorne, from his own daughter, left me speechless. Over the following weeks, our paths crossed frequently on the community center project. Elena was relentless, passionate, and brilliant. She fought for sustainable materials, for historical preservation elements, for accessibility features the budget didn't initially allow for. She was everything her father wasn't: idealistic, deeply caring, and infuriatingly detail-oriented. We clashed over specs, debated material choices, and slowly, a grudging respect formed. One evening, we were the last two left in the temporary site office, hunched over blueprints under a single flickering fluorescent light. We'd just won a small victory securing funding for solar panels. He would hate this, you know, she said suddenly, without looking up from the plans. My father. He'd call it a vanity project for tree huggers. Profitless. Sentimental. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. You don't get along, I ventured, my own history with Marcus making the question feel dangerously loaded. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. That's the understatement of the century. My father believes people are assets or liabilities. Emotions are weaknesses to be exploited. My mother was a liability when her social anxiety became inconvenient for his networking. I became a liability when I chose conservation engineering over corporate ladder climbing. She finally looked at me, and in her green eyes, I saw a reflection of my own pain: the betrayal, the dismissal, the feeling of being discarded for not fitting into a ruthless blueprint. He cut you off? I asked quietly. Essentially. Oh, the trust fund is there, but it's a leash, not a gift. He uses it to try and pull me back into his orbit. I work for the city so I can breathe my own air. She paused, studying me. Your wife, she's with him now. It wasn't a jab. It was a statement of shared history. Yes. I'm sorry, she said, and it was the first time anyone had said those words that didn't feel hollow. She wasn't sorry for me. She was sorry that we both understood the exact flavor of betrayal Marcus Thorne served. That night, we didn't talk about concrete or load limits. We talked about broken trust. We talked about the quiet agony of seeing someone you loved, or in her case, a child's need for a father's respect, morph into a stranger obsessed with power and image. We bonded over the shared rubble of our lives, not as a man wronged and a rebellious Harris, but as two people who had seen the ugly machinery behind a glittering facade. Friendship, for us, was a quiet revolution. It was coffee after site inspections, where sarcasm shielded our vulnerabilities. It was texting each other articles Marcus gave pompous quotes in. It was the solidarity of survivors. Then, one day, it was more. It happened after a city council meeting where Marcus's lawyers had tried to block our project to favor a luxury condominium development he was backing. Elena had argued with ferocious eloquence, but the political currents were against us. We'd lost. She was silent on the drive back, her fists clenched in her lap, vibrating with a rage I knew intimately. At her apartment, a modest, book-filled place much like my old one, she finally broke. Not into tears, but into a torrent of furious grief. He has to own everything. Control everything. Even when I try to build one good thing, one thing he can't put his name on for a profit, he has to smash it. I didn't try to placate her. I just stood there, my own old anger resonating with hers. I know, I said, my voice low. He takes what he wants. People are just things. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. In that moment, the last walls between us crumbled. We weren't just allies in a shared war anymore. We were two lonely people who had found, in the other's bruised heart, a place of profound understanding. The kiss wasn't planned. It was inevitable. It was heat and hunger and a desperate, healing solace. Falling in love with Elena Thorne was the most terrifying and regenerative experience of my life. It was rebuilding on a fault line, knowing the ground could shake at any moment. We kept it secret, a tender, fragile thing we protected from the toxic world of her father. With her, I wasn't the failed husband, the discarded employee. I was Daniel, the man who could make her laugh until she snorted, who valued her mind more than any surname, who wanted to build a life with her, not for her. When Marcus found out, his reaction was volcanic. Not out of care for his daughter, but out of a perceived assault on his empire. He summoned me to his office, a grotesque echo of my firing. "You," he spat, the polished facade gone, revealing the raw, brutal ambition beneath. "You think this is a clever revenge? Seducing my daughter? You're an ad. I swatted you away once, I can do it again." Elena, who had insisted on coming, stepped forward. "He didn't seduce me, father. I chose him. Something you wouldn't understand, since you only acquire people." The confrontation was brutal and final. He threatened to disinherit her completely, to destroy my career permanently. But for the first time, we held the high ground. We had each other. We walked out of that office hand in hand, into a future that was ours to define. We married in a small, simple ceremony at the nearly complete Community Arts Center. It was our place, our triumph. The only family Elena had there was her maternal grandfather, Arthur Lowell. A stoic, sharp-eyed man in his 80s, he had been a titan of industry himself, the one who had provided the seed capital for Thorne Engineering. He had watched his son-in-law's rise with growing distaste and his granddaughter's estrangement with sorrow. At the reception, held under the very solar panels we'd fought for, Arthur took me aside. "She glows," he said, his voice gravelly. "I haven't seen her that happy since she was a little girl, before her father decided love was a currency with poor returns." "I love her, sir," I said, meeting his gaze. "More than anything." "I know," he said. "I've been watching. I've seen what you two built here." He gestured at the building around us. "Not just this place. What you built between you. It has an integrity my son-in-law's skyscrapers will never possess." A few months later, Arthur Lowell passed away peacefully in his sleep. The reading of the will was a private affair. Elena and I were there, as were Marcus and, to my stunned discomfort, Sarah. She looked spectacularly elegant and utterly out of place, her hand possessively on Marcus's arm. She offered me a thin, pitying smile. I felt nothing but a distant chill. The lawyer read the standard bequests, charities, personal effects. Then he cleared his throat. "To my granddaughter, Elena Thorne Miller, and her husband, Daniel Miller, I leave my entire portfolio of shares in Thorne Engineering Solutions, representing a controlling 52% interest in the company." The silence was absolute, then fractured. "What?" Marcus roared, leaping to his feet. "That's impossible. That's my company." "It was my capital, Marcus," the lawyer said coolly, reading from Arthur's own appended letter. "I provided the foundation, but you built an empire of moral rot. You confused avarice with ambition, and domination with leadership. You discarded my daughter and alienated my granddaughter. The company deserves stewards who understand that true strength lies in integrity, not in intimidation. Daniel and Elena have built something beautiful from the rubble you left them. I trust them to rebuild this company in a better image." Sarah's face was a masterpiece of dawning horror. Her luxurious life, Her position, all of it, was tethered to Marcus's unchecked power at Thorn Engineering. That power had just been vaporized. The legal battles were swift and brutal. Marcus fought like a cornered animal, but Arthur's will was ironclad. Within a year, as majority shareholders, Elena and I oversaw a sweeping overhaul of the company. We shifted focus towards sustainable, ethical engineering projects. The old, cutthroat culture was purged. The final board meeting was the reckoning. Marcus, still a minor shareholder, sat fuming as Elena, now chairperson, outlined a new direction. The final item on the agenda was a review of executive positions. The role of CEO, Elena said, her voice clear and steady in the quiet room, requires a leader aligned with our new principles of ethical stewardship and collaborative innovation. Marcus Thorne, your vision for this company is incompatible with its future. The board has voted. Your employment, and your seat on this board, are terminated. Effective immediately. Watching him be escorted out, his face ashen with a mixture of fury and utter disbelief, was a moment of cold, clear justice. He had defined people by their utility, and now he had been deemed useless. As for Sarah, the unraveling was more public. Without Marcus's unfettered wealth and status, the gloss quickly faded. The society pages that had once celebrated her now chronicled her fall. Photos appeared of them leaving a restaurant, arguing on the sidewalk. Then, inevitably, the announcement of their separation. Elena and I did not gloat. We lived. We poured our energy into the company, into philanthropy, into our own growing family. Our love story, our Cinderella revenge tale as the gossip columns dubbed it, became public fascination. We were featured in magazines not for scandal, but for our work on green engineering initiatives. A spread in a prominent business journal showed us at the Community Arts Center, now bustling with life, with the headline, "Building a Legacy of Substance." One rainy afternoon, years later, I was walking to a lunch meeting. As I passed a bus stop, I saw her. Sarah. She was staring at the slick cover of a Society magazine in a newsstand kiosk. The cover photo was of Elena and me at a major charity gala, laughing, her hand resting on her visibly pregnant belly, my arm around her. We looked happy, grounded, real. Sarah didn't see me. Her face, still beautiful but now etched with lines of disappointment and hardness I didn't remember, was a mask of profound loss. She wasn't looking at my face or Elena's gown. She was staring at the life, the authenticity, the unshakable partnership that radiated from the image. It was the life she had traded for a gilded cage, a cage whose door was now open, revealing an empty world. She turned and walked away into the rain, her shoulders slumped. I felt no thrill of vengeance, no burning satisfaction. Only a quiet, profound gratitude. The storm Marcus and Sarah had unleashed had shattered my old life completely. But from that rubble, with Elena, I had learned to build something new. Not on dreams of luxury, but on a foundation of shared pain, hard-won respect, and a love that was tested in fire and found unbreakable. The blueprint was ours, and the structure, finally, was sound.